Hey everybody, good morning. Happy Monday. Well, it's been a snow day here. Wow. So we're expecting to get something like 2 to 4 or 3 to 6 inches, some incredible amount of icky snow. It's not icky, it's only icky when it's at the wrong time, but maybe it's magical. I'm trying. I'm totally trying. So hey, my name is Rita Hickman. I'm a body mind expert and I'm a shiatsu massage therapist, which means that I have this amazing ability, empathic and understanding of how the body mind works. And I've been focusing on it for a long time. And I dealt with it with shamanism, I've dealt with it with Asian medicine, I've dealt with it with Celtic, all over the place. My passion has always been body mind body mind healing, partially because I came from my own healing place. So one of the scariest things, not only when I was a kid, but also, if you're an adult in a narcissistic relationship, is something that only people who've experienced that level of toxicity will really understand what I'm talking about. So many times empaths end up with people who have more narcissistic traits. It's just the way that it is. For example, and many times people who are more on I like to say the right side of the spectrum, they're more on the Asperger's autism side than they are on the empath, codependent, way too sensitive healer side. And so my mom was like that. My mom could deal with my dad and his mental health and his anxiety and depression and mood swings and all the trauma that was going on in our family because she was wired so that she didn't have that extremely high level of sensitivity. However, my sister and I were not wired that way. And so one of the very, very scary things was the unexpectedness of conflict, the unexpectedness of a blow up or a blowout. And it turns people who are more sensitive, who aren't as prepared for it, into having their nervous system ends up on high alert constantly. And then when it's on high alert, it develops digestive problems, develops joint problems, it causes fibro flare ups, it creates migraine headaches. I mean, it's all sorts of crazy things. So the difference between someone who's being victimized or traumatized and someone who isn't is actually the victim themselves. So I used to read this wonderful story about this woman in the future who was a cop who'd had all this crazy, awful, horrific trauma when she was a kid. And she surrounded herself with people who were okay with that. We're okay with her dealing with her PTSD, okay with her dealing with her trauma and her very, very narcissistic tendencies. So the people around her were not victims because they developed the tools and the skills and the wisdom and the confidence and connection with her so that it wasn't a victimization. And they had the confidence to also, let's say, call her on it when when they went too far. So if you don't have an internal alert that says danger, Will Robinson, then you're probably in a relationship. You're more comfortable being in a relationship with people who are more volatile. People who deal with more mental health because that just doesn't bother you as much. So but otherwise, if you're on the other side of the spectrum and if you're watching this video, then you're more sensitive, intuitive, tuned into spirit, tuned into how the universe works, to higher levels of thinking, to a higher consciousness, to bigger pictures. You're probably tuned into that. And so it's likely that you've experienced a lot of traumas in your life. Trauma is something that's unexpected, that you feel you have no control over, that you're not able to process through. It's either too scary or you were trained not to, or you're confident or you're impaired, on some sort of, on all the things that we impair ourselves with. And so trauma after trauma may happen when you're in a relationship with someone who's dealing with anxiety or depression or bipolar or dealing with their own complex PTSD or ADD or ADHD. It's you'll probably end up feeling traumatized on a regular basis, especially if you came from a family where or a culture or idea where women, their job was to people please, and their job was to be perfect, and their job was to not get anything wrong, and their job was to pick up the slack for everybody else, and their job was to take responsibility for everybody else's emotions. And that's probably worked for a very long time, all those skills. But to live in the real world, to grow up, to evolve as a human being, we have to get past the coping skills, and we have to get into the things that keep us as victims, into the things that keep us trapped as victims, our own ideas, our own beliefs about how the world does work, how the world should work, or even our own past trauma that we haven't resolved that keeps us on an even higher alert than we ever thought possible. So when you're in a relationship with someone who deals with high levels of anxiety, or they have a very difficult time regulating their emotions, or maybe they've just been, it's been okay, it was just treated as, well, that's just the way the person is. If you're in a relationship with somebody like that, that can be really hard. And one of the challenges is the unexpected blowout. The things are well, but then let's say stress starts to develop. It's a bad day, there's weather, it develops, and it starts to spiral out of control. And then you end up being in these situations where you have all of these unexpected blowouts, and you as a sensitive are probably traumatized by that. So if you're stuck in the relationship, let's say you're trying to get through the divorce, or if you've decided to stay because you've got children and maybe you can make it work, or because you're recognizing it, let's say in a workplace, and you haven't been able to find a new job yet. Let's say all those things are in place and you need to cope with unexpected trauma, unexpected blowouts. How do you do that? Well, one of the first things you do is you acknowledge the fact that you are 100% responsible for how you feel. So it means that you finally take responsibility, finally take ownership of the life that you want to live. You're not looking to anybody else to make your life better. You're only looking to you to make your life better. And the cool thing is when you start to do things to make your life better, all of these other blessings and all of these other people and all of these other doors open. And you realize that everything that you thought was true isn't true. But how do you survive it? How do you survive this process of dying and rebirth, of spiritual evolution, of transformation, of becoming the person that you're supposed to be, of not staying in a stuck place of being in pain and trauma and reaction and overwhelm? How do you cope? So you take 100% responsibility, and then you start looking for the things that help you cope without too much judgmentalism. Try to stay away from things which are which are highly addictive and in the long term may cause you problems. But otherwise, if you're going through a process like that, you need to prepare yourself. So I have around me, or I, have used to get through those big transformative, almost like connecting with spirit, going through your life lessons sort of thing. I have to slow my life lessons down because they take too long. I can't handle that high level of stress. So I have to dial it down. I have to manage it and control it, take 100% responsibility for my own experience. So you start by deciding what your boundaries are, making sure that you don't feel victimized, that a line isn't crossed. And what you're going to do if that's happening, if you're finding yourself getting lost, if you're finding yourself getting trapped, now's the time when it's in a good space to come up with your solution. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle it when the next unexpected episode occurs? How do you want to handle it? What's important to you? What boundaries do you have? So the second one is, I am the biggest fan of plant medicines, and I'm the biggest fan of supporting your own body's natural, miraculous healing ability and all of that. So I keep a bunch of things around. If I keep my super good probiotics to keep my gut in good shape, because as soon as you get stressed out, at least for me, my gut locks down. I can't digest, I can't eat, I can't anything. It all just locks down. So I make sure I take a really good probiotic and have one around, so that when the stress comes, when you go into your own fight or flight, your digestive system isn't hindering it. Same thing with vitamins. I use a really good vitamin, and I especially keep them around and stay diligent about them, because if your body doesn't get the resources it needs, the nourishment that it needs, then it's not going to, mentally and emotionally, you're going to crack. You're going to crack in half. I do also keep regular pharmaceuticals around. So I'll keep Xanax around, and definitely, I'll take 1/4 of the lowest dose, but having it there so that you can manage, so that you have something that will help you dial it down when you need it. I always keep GABA around. My favorite thing right now are these GABA gummies that are at Walgreens, believe it or not. And so I'll pop the gummies and do that. Then there's making sure that the foods you put in your body and the times you put it in your body are optimal for you. Same thing about hydration, making sure you get the hydration you need, making sure you're drinking and you're stocked with and drinking your chamomile teas, drinking your sleepy time teas. You know what? When I'm under a rough time, I take 2 tea bags, I stick them in a glass of water. I put the glass of water next to my bed. And if I'm struggling with anything, I can take a couple sips and it will help put me back to sleep. I'll keep things like Tylenol PM around if I need to. I keep the things around that work for me. And then I make sure that I have some habits in place that so that my body and my mind are resilient, more resilient to what's going to happen. Because when you're blindsided by something, because you really don't want to live your life walking on eggshells, it's a terrible way to live, because your body can never ever heal itself, because it's in a constant state of fight or flight. So you have to be able to relax, which means that you have to be able to trust in the fact that you can manage yourself, and you can be in charge of your emotions, and you can only give yourself as much as you're willing to deal with at any point in time. You have to give yourself permission for that. And then the last thing, is so much compassion. You have to understand, when someone, whether it's you or someone else, is dealing with high internal stress, don't regulate their emotions very well because of that high internal stress, because of chemistry or physical, or physicality or situation or whatever. You have to have a ton of compassion, because transformation is hard. It literally is a death and a rebirth. And every time that there's a conflict, every time that there's a blow up, it's an opportunity for you to take the time and process through. So there's like 4 stages of healing. And this wisdom has been around for tens of thousands of years. In all of the ancient cultures, they find it. In all the cultures that have sustained, let's say Asian culture, they found it. It's all the same thing. There's the excitedness, things start to get aroused. And then there's the big climax, when it's dun, da, da, dun. And then there's the retreat into self. And then there's the wisdom and the insight and the understanding that comes on the other side. So it's in your best interest to use every opportunity that you can, every flow that you can, in order to heal. Because what happens is, when you do heal, the faster you heal, the more and faster you make better decisions, the more you grow up to the person you're supposed to be, the more you are closer to spirit, to God, to all that is, to the great mystery, your higher power. It doesn't matter. The closer you are to that. And so you get to decide when you're ready for a healing and when you're not. And if you can start to look at these situations possibly as healings, and how you're going to handle them, watch the flow. How are you going to handle this flow? How are you going to stay with this flow? How are you going to process through this flow so that you don't self-destruct or destroy your relationships or your property or your job or anything else in the meantime? How do you manage that? And so when you have all those things in place, when you expect that there's going to be an unexpected, and you surround yourself with friends, family, love, herbal supplements, rest, exercise, nutrition, prescription medication, legal, illegal prescription medication, whatever you got to do, you need to make sure that you feel prepared to handle this process. So Prometheus and Heracles, there's a story about how Prometheus stole fire from the gods, gave it to people, and he was punished by Zeus by having a vulture tear out his liver every day. And then it would grow back, and the vulture would come and tear out his liver again every day, which for some cultures is the seat of emotions. And Heracles came and killed the vulture and set Heracles free. So this transformation process, it's painful. It can be very painful. And that's what stops most people. You have to be very courageous and very brave to decide to take steps into personal growth. It's not something that, that you walk into lightly. But if you're in the situation now, if you don't want to be stuck, if you don't want to be trapped, if you don't want to die a miserable death because you're sick, then you have to start to make those changes. And you can make those changes with the narcissist in your life, without the narcissist in your life. They're going to come, they're going to bring their baggage, they're going to bring their challenges. And your challenge is to not fix them, not change them, but to evolve and grow yourself. Because that's the only way you can help the world. It's the only way you can move forward. It's the only way you can make a difference. It's the only way is for you to go face those fears, face your fears, walk through them, have a positive new experience, and come out the other side. You walk through the fire, you walk through the gateway, you walk off the cliff, and you end up being okay. That's how we do it. And you prepare for it, knowing that it's a journey, just like a hero's quest. And you can do this when you get support, when you have information, when you have care, when you have love, when you have insight, when you have understanding, when you have all these things going for you, you can do this, okay? So if you feel stuck, let me know. We've got a wonderful women's group we're doing every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I haven't opened it up to the general public, but reach out to me. We'll set up a strategy call and look at what's going on in your life. And if you're a good fit, then I'll invite you into the group, because we want to make sure that it's filled with women who are kind and positive and supportive. This is a place of love. This is a place of sacredness. And it's not necessarily just a support group. It's a sacred space. And so if you're looking for support in that way, if you're tired of doing it alone, if you know by now you can't do it by yourself, let me know. Reach out, share this with other people. Send this to them if you think it could help. And we'll get everybody moving in the right direction. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm going to end up shoveling a little bit today, I think. And I'll talk to you later.